thinking about majority rule and what it really meant beyond politics for access, ownership, and opportunity, wondering if the door was opened, why as a nation we never fully walked through it, thinking about how we've leveraged or under-leveraged the wealth of our land and sea, and whether we build systems that turn natural endowment into lasting national value. Wondering if the Bahamas is rich, who owns the wealth? And if we don't, why not? And what would it take to change that practically, intentionally, and sustainably? So tonight, we're going to think about it with intentional thought, not partisan, not nostalgic, not emotional fear. We can consider stewardship, systems, and responsibility. And we can consider where we go from here.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. What we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative, 242.
Welcome to Something to Think About. What happened here now? Oh, crap. Welcome. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Sorry about that. Somehow,
we lost your image, though. We lost your image.
Yeah. I don't know why the camera decided to conk out on me. I can get an image back in a second, but let's just talk to it as we can.
This is an important show, so we can do what we have to do.
Yeah, man. You know how this thing go. Cool. So, welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. And this evening we're going to have a special show. As our good friend here, Prescott Smith, just said. And we also have joining us by surprise, acclamation of the people, I guess. Mr. Code Smith. And we'll ask the two of them to introduce themselves shortly. But they tell us a lot of things there. And when Mr. Smith comes back, and I think we'll say Prescott and Code. Is that fine with you, gentlemen?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Call us by first names. Otherwise, it'll get confusing. Two Smiths, you know.
Yeah.
Two Smiths equal a powerhouse.
Yeah. And sometimes that happens. when Smith have the most people in, no, I think it's Roll and then Smith and then it's no. Now, I don't know if that's still the case, but that used to be the case when I was in high school. The most
Yes, Smith and
persons
Rule.
in the Bahamas.
No, Code is the senior Smithy, so I have to.
Oh, yeah, so
stand. The military says you gotta stand in line, so I gotta.
yeah, but we know you walked that walk before.
Yeah,
So,
he's exactly. He's the one who's throwing, blowing from one politician to the next, so he knows the battles.
yeah. So, folks, in the 242 and in the world, welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. And like I said, this evening we're going to have a very, very, very intriguing conversation with these two good gentlemen on the screen. I'll get my camera back online shortly, and hopefully we'll go from there. But in the meantime, let's just talk it through. And so our guest, as in Prescott Smith, is someone who truly understands the land and the sea, not just in theory, but in practice, policy, and long-term consequences. He brings international memory, real field experience, and the discipline to talk about ownership without turning it into noise. Tonight, Captain Smith, he's a captain too, a seasoned Bahamian environmentalist, professional, and industry leader whose work has consistently centered Bahamian stewardship, Bahamian participation, and Bahamian benefit. He is the co-founder of the Bahamas National Resources Foundation, president of the Bahamas Fly Fishing Industry Association, and former board member and education advisor of the Bahamas National Trust. With decades of experience, see? All that they put under them big hat when they get on the two of them. With decades of experience across marine operations, environmental governance, and tourism development. And Captain Smith joins us to explore how majority rule advances access, where the economic gaps still live, and what practical and functional pathways exist right now for the Bahamas to become more self-supported, more resilient, and less dependent. So Captain Smith and Coach Smith, welcome to Something to Think About. And
Thank you.
Coach, sorry if you pinch it now, so I don't have a bio on you, but you could give the people some background so that they know why Prescott brought you along. Because
He's got lots of experience. He's got a long resume. But he
ain't say all of that. He can just tell the people the important of what I just say.
The key things. Listen, I just so that I can make it very clear. Now I'm an attorney, but I'm not here as an attorney. Some of the things that I think relates to this is that I am an attorney for the fly fishing industry, the foundation, as well as the BSCA. In fact, I'm a founding member of that. The BSCA. These are organizations that Prescott, essentially in his vision, had in mind to do. And we came to know each other because of my fight to save Clifton, which is a part of our heritage. But then also I served in Parliament for a period, and as a PLP member of Parliament, and I served at that time as the best commissioner chairman. The chairman of the best commission is called BEST, which is Bahamas Environmental and Scientific Commission.
Right.
And with the best commission, we had the responsibility to ensure that, especially people who come into the Bahamas to do development, that they followed environmental protocols. And so, in terms of this, and then of course I'm a student of history. Especially as it relates to the majority rule. So I have, I think, good enough information to connect between the majority rule history as well as what Prescott has been doing for 30 years now. We've known each other. So that's in a nutshell.
Cool. And y'all could introduce the two dogs in the background who talking to each other. So
I think that's on my side. I got a noisy dog, but he's nice.
yeah. No problem, no problem. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good to know because we really like to talk about history from the perspective of how it's going to inform us going forward. Because this show is all about finding opportunities, particularly for the young people, because I found that a lot of young people were saying that there's nothing in the Bahamas for them. They don't know what to do. And every time they try to get a decent job, people tell them that they're not qualified or they're overqualified and so forth. And so I was trying to encourage them to become entrepreneurs. And so, everybody was talking about doctor and lawyer and this and that. And I'm like, you don't have to be a doctor and lawyer. There's many things that you could do in the Bahamas. Go ahead.
Before you get into that, let me introduce an idea for us to build on top of it. I know Prescott is on tune with this. This whole thing in the Bahamas that we have called the Bahamas, it really started in earnest in 1958 when we had the general strike, which is when most businesses went on strike and essentially shut down the country. And that was the time when it led into, I'm sure people heard of the Burman Road riots.
Yeah. We talked about a lot of those things on the show in different times.
Good.
So I don't want to repeat all of that.
Can we say hello? Can we say hello to people who are saying hello to us? Go.
Sure.
Yes.
I see a wonderful lady, Rosemary. She's a real patriot.
Aurelia.
Yeah, Rosemary. You see her?
Yes, I do. But the point I want to make, I'm happy before we go on from it, that led to the suffragette movement, which is when women had the right to vote, which led eventually under the PLP, and we have to say history the way it is. Under the PLP, it led to majority rule. Now, I have a huge bone to pick with Mr. Michael Pintard because I saw on YouTube that him and his supporters and his members of his party, and that's fine. They went to the tombstone of Mr. Wallace Whitfield, Cecil Wallace Whitfield. Mm-hmm. He's a man who I respect highly. However, Cecil Wallace Whitfield was the chairman of the PLP when we achieved majority rule. And we need to put them all in the right context. It's a fact. I mean, it's not a choice. It's like you said, it's not emotional. It is what it is. We need to say the right thing before we direct or misstate the real factual situation. And with that led to Mr. Wallace Whitfield left the PLP in 1970. And I think 1972 is when the FNM came into existence. Yeah. And I'm saying all that for real is fine. And I agree with Michael in the sense that he should jump on the real bandwagon, historical bandwagon, to show that the FNM and the people of the FNM support the issue of majority rule. But let's speak about it factually. Perhaps, and I would say this to both parties, that Mr. Michael Pintard perhaps ought to have made a suggestion to Mr. Brave Davis, who's the leader of the PLP, and even to Mr. Lincoln Bain, the leader of the COI, is it? That they should have all gotten together and have one celebration, one commemorative ceremony for majority rule. And none of the three of them could say anything against any of the other because everyone would be doing the same thing. But when you start to speak about Cecil Wallace Whitfield, you have to speak about him in the context, not of an FNM, to speak of him in the context as a chairman of the PLP at the time. That's historical.
Yes.
That's a fact. And so we missing the boat, and I wish to discourage people just for the sake of their own little organization, be it a political organization or a lodge, to say something that is not true.
Yeah, but you partly answer one of the questions I have, but when we come to it, I guess you could do it. Because my thing on that whole episode that you just mentioned is why, and we're not going to dive into that because that's going to take away from what we're going to do, but I always ask, and you could probably come back so we could deal with that, is why, if people were involved in all of those things leading up from from property, etc., coming to now, and then you had the split. Why do they disown majority rule and independence altogether? I mean, they were part of that movement, so they those things are national things. They're not partisan things.
No.
And so I'm thinking that we should always be dealing with these things as professionals and as responsible citizens,
Yes.
especially if the people vote you in to be responsible for them,
Yes.
right? And so forth. So you just got your invitation to come back so we could deal with those kind of things. But I know Prescott don't want to go into those things, and I don't want to go into them too much here today.
I believe Prescott has a story that he had with Sir Lyndon.
Yeah.
That
But we can get to that because I'm sure he can talk to it when I ask him some of these questions.
which makes the connection between majority rule and entrepreneurship, which is what we've been doing over the last 30 years now.
Okay, so Prescott, you want to touch on that right now because this is all about trying to find and help people understand how we could get ownership, and then if we're disciplined with our ownership, then we will get wealth. So
yes, because the whole issue, I am very bothered that every time we have this celebration of majority rule, and that's why I say I'm happy to be on this show with you, because first of all, it's a platform that we encourage to have an honest conversation about majority rule.
mm-hmm.
The majority has never truly ruled in the Bahamas, right? I think where we got caught up with, and Code's point about Mr. Pendling, I remember him sitting in a van in Stanyard Creek, Andros, and I was always very curious as a young person. I asked him questions, why was Andros in a certain way in terms of its development and so forth. And he looked at me and he said, young man, he said, we fought for what we know as majority rule in 1967 and then political independence in 1973. But he was honest enough to say that, the last stage of the journey was economic independence, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he said that we never achieved that. And so I think what happened to leaders, current and in the past, is we get caught up in this whole thing of, just at the political level, one party wins, they get political power, and the next one is fighting for political power. But the reality is, no country in our region was ever handed true majority rule.
Yeah.
Right? And they're not going to give it to you. You have to earn it. You have to fight for it, like we had to fight for everything else. But this is the main battle that we have not achieved yet. Now, there are some steps that we've made towards that, building institutions from the College of the Bahamas to university now to the Defense Force to national insurance. But the main areas of the economy, and this is not unique to the Bahamas,
right,
always remain in the hands of that same economic model that was imported from, I go back to, a simple way to put this is those who went into the continent of Africa from all of the countries that sat at the table at the Berlin Conference.
right,
Was Belgium, France, Spain, Germany, Portugal, even the United States was there. If you look at that economic model from the global north, as long as they maintain control of the key resources of an economy, they control it. And so you end up with political independence, but true majority rule is not something that they ever just going to hand over to you.
right,
You have to fight your way to it, to empower and get control of your resources and build an economic model where the citizens become true owners of it. And I think a lot of times where we have gone asleep without understanding that the root of what we're facing in the Bahamas, to understand what is the best strategy for us to get there. So we have
Right.
never really we've had political majority rule and political independence based on, yes, you can vote in a particular party, but even when you look at the parties, where their revenue, they're deriving the revenue from, they're borrowing it from, the very institutions that was set up,
Yeah.
those countries that conquered the continent of Africa. So the World Bank, the IMF, the IDB, they're funding all of these countries, right? So the wealth, the true wealth of the economy is still controlled by a very small group of individuals who Mr. Pendleton had to fight from way back then.
Yeah. So yeah, we have all of that, right? And I understand that. And some of my audience would have experienced different people on the shows where we went through that. And we thank you for putting your personal touch on it because it helps bring the context as to what has happened in the past. But I don't want us to just focus on what happened in the past because we never look at what we need to do going forward.
I agree with
That's
you.
one of the conversations why I always push, because this show also pushes conversations that nobody else is talking about, or nobody else have the nerve to talk about, or they just don't talk about it because they don't know nothing about it, right? And then they're too lazy to go through the fray.
Or they're afraid to talk about it, like you say.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, but sometimes you just gotta do some research and go talk down with the old people and sit under the tree, and that's what we do here. But before we do this, I go and find out from people what was happening, and then I try to piece together things to make myself a little educated because I wasn't there. I grew up hearing about all these things because my family was right in the midst of most of that, but it's still only secondhand information. I can vividly remember my grandmother telling us to occupy ourselves by strutting around the house in Chippenham, this gigantic house. I thought it was gigantic.
Right.
We were singing We Can Overcome. We were singing Black Women Proud. We were singing if you're white, you're right, the black stay back, and all them different, all kind of songs would help you understand what was what. So yes, no, I understand these things, and I find and I get your point because there's a lot of people, literally a lot of people, including people in code set who don't know, and they so proud they won't even say they don't know, but they spew out stuff that don't really make sense, right? If you dig it up and so forth.
What to do to bring it home? Happy. The reality is what Prescott has been able to do with those organizations you listed. For example, one I would invite him to jump in on this one, and that is with the fly fishing industry. Perry Christie, as the Prime Minister at the time, when I was officially in office, he raised the issue of how Perry Christie believed that the fly fishing industry was $500 million worth to the Bahamas. We believe it is even more than that. But since then, Happy, Prescott will speak more to it, but there are more than 400 fly fishing guides throughout the Bahamas who, particularly by his hand almost singly, he has been able to, him and a few people he talk about, went around the whole Bahamas and certified these people to be fly fishing guides. And these people are so very important to the industry we have here, to the Bahamas economy. Prescott.
Yeah, but that only came about, again, I looked at the model, what Mr. Pendleton shared, going all the way back from the continent of Africa. And it didn't just happen to the continent of Africa, it's Central, South America, same story when it comes to resources, right? And again, I looked and say, well, our economic model that Mr. Pendleton inherited, we talk about tourism, we talked about banking. But if you look at the model, it says touristic development and marinas. It never talked about Bahamians being owners of any of these sectors.
Right.
So it's about you having a job in that. And so when I looked at the model, studying it, and realized that this is a model we inherited, and unless we change it to put our people in a position of ownership, and how we knew how code, and I can tell you the story, how we knew it was we were on the right track, because the amount of resistance and opposition that you receive for trying to do anything to empower local citizens in ownership, it's like the saying, dogs don't bark at parked car. Now, if we were not doing it, if we were not on the right track, we would not receive any resistance. And so that's what really drove me in how we developed the Fly Fishing Association, the Sports Fishing and Conservation Association. I'm going to tell you the story that Code could tell you. We hired a plane. It's not like these things were not cheap. It wasn't just, $4,000 or $5,000 cheap.
Right.
We flew to the world headquarters in Fort Lauderdale called the IGFA. And it was Code Smith, Livingston Marshall, the director of fisheries, Michael Brennan, the permanent secretary in the Prime Minister's office at the time. I think his name was Mr. Ronald Thompson, Joel Moxie, and myself. And what is interesting to hear the Americans say, well, who the hell is BSCA? We've been running things in the Bahamas before 1973. Now, that sounds very harsh, but do you realize that they're still running things in the Bahamas in that particular sector?
Don't surprise me.
When it comes to our oceans and all of the yachts out there that are dropping those rods and trolling the marinas. So hence this whole brewing issue about fees. And again, notice the noise about the fees. They're not talking about the fee that the marinas are getting. So I said, let's look at one number. Let's say the government is charging $600 a year for the fee. If you do that by 365 days a year, right, you're not even getting $2 a day. That same yacht that they're asking to pay $600 a day to the marina. See the difference? No one is making noise about the $600 a day or the $1,000 a day to the marina. But the government wants $1 something per day for the Bahamian people. It's a problem. So you always know you're on the right track when it comes to ownership by the citizens at the end of the day. And that's how we got into trying to develop industries based on our true wealth. The same thing when you look at all of the mineral resources that leave the Bahamas, not just over decades. You will see a situation where the salt industry, the aragonite industry, the sand industry, the limestone industry, the marine resources in 1,000 different areas. All of these things was never meant about local ownership at the highest level. And yet we follow this model, says touristic development, banking. Even in the banking sector, you work in an offshore bank, but we're creating wealth for somebody else at the end of the day. And so in my in-depth study, I realized that if we are going to achieve true majority rule, we have to reverse all of those systems.
Right. And that's the purpose of the show.
Yes.
Right?
Very powerful show you have here.
Yeah.
But I can say though that the reversal of that deals or does away with the Bahamian people being the normal hewers of wood and drawers of water, to use a term that is well known worldwide. We are just not there to do the bidding of other people, but to make our own way. And so we have to have, with what we're talking about, is about enforcement as well. The environment, Happy, is very, very important to the Bahamas. It's perhaps one of the single most important thing that we have. And I hope and pray that the Deputy Prime Minister, who is the Minister for Tourism and Aviation, but in his tourism context, he has announced this, what Prescott just mentioned a moment ago, the increase of fees, for
Right.
boating fees. And I know that people are talking about he has to drop it and they're not going to come to the Bahamas. Listen, I hope that he never, ever backs from that. I don't care who would have been in his post. If it was him or someone in a different administration, the fees need to be there. What we have to do is to clarify for people worldwide, including the ones who are coming in their boats, we need that money to protect our industry, meaning our environment. And Prescott will talk more detail about that from a technical point of view in terms of, as a fisherman and people who are involved in fly fishing and fishing generally, why it is so important for us to keep it. Now, I'm saying this thing, I'm happy, because the majority rule concept is not fully endowed to many people. You have to have,
Yeah.
if the majority of people say we need that money, charge it. It needs to stay in place. Don't drop it. Because
Yeah.
it will really be the minority of people who cause them to be discontinued.
Right. And so when we look at that whole picture, though, right, there's certain, as an engineer, I'll tell you, there's certain fundamentals in just about everything that we need to tackle, right? And so we could argue bet as much as we want and educate people as to what has happened in the past and what is wrong about what is happening now. But I'm a firm believer that unless you're addressing how you can get out of that situation, you can never get out of the situation.
Out of what situation, Happy? What situation?
The situation where we don't necessarily have the access to the things that you were talking about. Other people have the controls and the access to it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So
Yeah, I think our leaders. Oh, sometimes I am. Some of it is we're not aware of, and some of it is just the lack of confidence. You would not believe the people who have been encouraging me, even coming on your show. They want you to be careful what you say. They want you to tiptoe around everything, and it's a deep-rooted fear among our people when it comes to knowing our true value, what we're worth, and this is how people can say the most ridiculous thing. Like a former Defense Force colleague of mine, when I broke it down and I said, well, this whole issue with the boating fee, I said, well, let's look at one of the fees, $500 a year, right? I said, well, that's $1 something a day for the country, for that boat to be here. I said, what about all the garbage that they bring into the country? I said, what about all the sewage, the disposal into our waters?
yeah,
I said, what about all the marine life?
you pay for that.
I said, do you think $1 something a day is too much? I said, but you notice that nobody is saying $500 a day or $1,000 a day to the marina. Whereas I said, do you realize that all marinas in the country are built on the seabed that belongs to every Bahamian citizen?
Yeah.
And 99% of our people don't even know that. So
Yeah,
the
we got to change the
deliberate-
school system for one. Yeah.
You got it. The deliberate and that's the reason why they can say the most ridiculous things to us as citizens, and they're actually insulting us, telling you what they think of us, when they can make something that normally you would be embarrassed to make an issue, and they figure that we have so little value of who we are and our worth that someone could tell you paying you $1 something a day to come in the most beautiful waters in the world and to extract the hog snapper, the lobster, the grouper, the red snapper, the mahi, the wahoo, and everything else. And that's why this topic you're discussing of majority rule is so important, because we have watered down and stopped the majority rule thing as majority political rule.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. So one of the things on that though is majority rule that was accomplished in '67 that was to provide access, right? Equal access for every single citizen to have equal vote and access. It didn't matter whether the PLP won that election or the FNM won that, the UBP won that election, etc. Majority rule would have happened. Now, what wouldn't have happened necessarily is the
Well,
spin-off.
I don't think,
Hold on. What wouldn't have happened was the spin-off of it, which would have been the side where the majority of people would have had government control, right? But not the majority of people, but the majority of the people were in the majority. But that's a different issue. But I don't want to dive into that too much. But that is a fact, right? So what I'm saying here though is access opens doors, right? And ownership builds futures. But majority rule manifested the access from a political point of view, and I agree with you 1,000%. From a social and an economic point of view, we're not even close to that, right? And so when we look at this whole picture, though, then the question is how, as I put it to the guests and the audience, and I want you to answer this question, audience, these two questions here. What does access mean to you, personally and professionally? And what does ownership look like in your life and in our community? Because we heard the talk where people say that most people don't even have $1,000 in the bank account, right? I wouldn't talk about land, especially after the removal of the Property Act was removed. That make land come out totally out of whack. But when we look at all those things, I want the audience to think about those things as we go in and ask your questions specifically from those perspectives and so forth, right? So if we go back to where we are as a group and what we're trying to accomplish, right? I asked the question of you two gentlemen. When we look at the Bahamas today, where do you see the clearest underdeveloped opportunities for Bahamians to move into ownership? Not 20 years from now, but in this generation. Because like I said before, we could talk over and over and over and again, and we've had multiple shows where we talk about how things were treated bad and all these negative things. But if we don't get up and move, we can't complain about why the dog moaning at the foot of your step, at your footsteps, right? So, anyone y'all could take the question first.
Go ahead, I'll let you go first because I have a few things I would like to dive into this.
Well, I think first of all, in our time, and I know Prescott will touch on some things that I share with him, but let me say a couple of other things, and that is, it's about farming. We do not farm enough. I mean, on a big scale, and we should. We have the land, but we don't encourage people to do it. There are some individuals who think that people should go to university to do this, that, and the other thing. Yes, but at the end of the day, if we farm, and farming means, for example, even animal husbandry, we can do that stuff now to help ourselves. But the government has to make a determination to keep the outsiders from coming in, because the outsiders would always be able to undercut us. Now, I know over the last many years, with BAMSI in place and all that, has been working to some degree. But we need to have the government of the Bahamas pass legislation to help those things that people produce here to be utilized here, to encourage Bahamian people. Listen, I know my wife talks about organic stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And the reality is, she said, well, some code, I got to start going to the market. I said, why? She said, because all organic stuff is there. Because our people they very seldom, they don't have the money to buy the pesticide.
Yeah.
And so we should be able to get the okra and all that stuff because it's all organic. It's good. So we need people to start doing more of that. Less about complaining, because if you go to the super value prices are so high. People talk about it all the time. But if it is that we could go back to when my grandparents and my parents were alive, at least we could know that the stuff that is created, grown in Crooked Island, for example, is organic. It's natural.
Right.
And those things were very good. The people had different issues, but that would be one of the the underdeveloped opportunities that we need to exploit more of. That can happen now.
Cool. That's good for people to know. And before you go, Preston, I would say farming is great, but what would you call farming in the sea? Because that's where I think we have the greatest opportunity in the Bahamas, because we have land mass of about 8,000 square miles, whatever, and sea is about 100 and something.
Yes.
So
100-something thousand.
Yeah. Go ahead, Prescott.
Yeah, so when you talk about, Code's point is, it's like, when we can get serious and set a goal and say we're going to feed ourselves as a nation,
Yeah.
right? Not just pay lip service to it. So, BAMSI is a great step forward, but don't just do halfway about it. It annoys me that the campus of BAMSI is not officially open yet. Students are not living in that building after 10 years.
Wow.
So we can't just, kind of the appearance of doing things. If you talk about agriculture, at the end of the day, let's get that institution properly funded. Let's build the science and research labs. Let's develop the seed bank storage facility, not so that we don't need to be depending on Monsanto and all of these things, because we all know that Grammy, who had the corn in Crooked Island and Andros and all of these were native to our country, right? But do we have a seed bank as a people, or are we still dependent on importing everything for us? So that's a major step forward for us are we even going to set a goal to grow 50% of the food that we eat? Because you're not truly ever independent unless you could feed yourself. And we can do it at the end of the day. And we need to look at agriculture and truly a combination of saying, well, what about all the marine products that we don't use and we can use natural fertilizers? Go think about all the lobster fishermen going out there and just throwing the heads away. Is this something that can be processed and used when you're growing the tomatoes, the cucumber? So like your wife says, this is 100% organic.
Yes,
that's what the Native Americans did. They use fish. It's one of the best fertilizers you can use, or some type of seafood. But at the end of the day, we're not making these connections the way we should, right? Let's look at national insurance platform. I have a lot of respect for those leaders like George Mackey, Jeffrey Thompson, the type of determination and vision that they had. National insurance is a natural platform that was built for the sovereign wealth foundation of the country. Right? But still in 2026, we have not put $1 into a sovereign wealth fund. And we have no excuse for that. If I was the prime minister today, and I know I can see positive things in certain areas happen, but if I was the prime minister today, I would let no one put the first dollar in a sovereign wealth fund but me as the leader of the country. And guess what? Code Smith will be throwing in 10 cents. Dale Happy Nose will be throwing in 10 cents. And let us lay the foundation for the next generation. Don't just say Norway have $1.7 trillion. That didn't happen overnight, but we have to make it start. Another thing about it is the government can declare with a stroke of a pen. These are things that I would sign every green, of sand, and mineral resources over in this country to the citizens of the Bahamas. And automatically you could change the psyche of Bahamians overnight, the level of confidence and ownership that you mean to tell me that the government of the Bahamas truly made me an owner of every grain of calcium carbonate, every grain of sand, every grain of aragonite. So it means that every contract would have to be renegotiated.
Right.
That Bahamian and Montel Height, when he sees a dump truck driving through with a load of fill on the back of it, you know what he can say? You know, I have ownership in that. I feel good about my country. The government has given me not token ownership, but with the stroke of a pen. And then what it means is national insurance then has a platform. You now have revenue coming in because you then transfer real ownership of the resources of the country to the citizen. So all of these proposed mines, like I see this, I am tired of seeing Bahamians fronting and willing to sell out. I see this whole thing about going into Maguana, right, to build a port. I mean, Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles know it's a mining project, right? But tell the Bahamian people about the true resources in Maguana, which is granite. 99% of our citizens don't even know it exists in the Bahamas because we withhold this information among these little cliques and then wonder why we are not achieving true majority rule because of the greed and selfishness of a few. They just want to enrich themselves to the detriment of that mother in Montel Heights, that mother in Baintown, that young man in the Grove, because they don't think that they are deserving. And you could change the psyche of our citizens. Crime will drop overnight if every young Bahamian citizen in this country knew that you mean to tell me that this government with a stroke of a pen just gave me real ownership in my country. Some of them wouldn't even tear their shirt open and walk around with their chest big because you have such a sense of pride then that I am not a citizen in this country where what I say don't matter. I'm insignificant because I don't live in Lyford Key on the Eastern Road or Paradise Island. I am now an owner in my country, straight across the board. So these are the steps that we can take that will bring majority rule into fruition. Put the first dollar in a sovereign wealth fund. Transfer real ownership to the citizens of the country when it comes to the resources of the country. Not lip service to it. Not some side deals at the end of the day of how politicians and cronies get rich. Because we will not be fulfilling what Mr. Pendling and Jeffrey Thompson, Doris Johnson, I remember, I call him another great one is, I just called his name a while ago with National Insurance in Fox Hill. What's his name?
Mackey.
George Mackey. I mean, I read his book and it tells you a lot about how those individuals think. Paul Adley. There were many others. I mean, it's not just in the political arena.
Right.
I can tell you many unsung heroes who are thinking along that line. Yeah.
Cool. Yes, very much so. And so when we look at that now, right? So that access exists for some people in some spaces. And like you said, there's room for greater growth in it, where you could catalyze it through like a sovereign wealth fund, etc. So what practical entry points can Bahamians use right now to step into ownership without our natural resources, within our natural resources economy? How can not you and Code, because you're in a different tier, right?
We struggle just like everybody else. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, but y'all already.
And we spending a few pennies trying to fight for all Bahamians.
Right. I was about to say the difference.
Right. I understand that, but that's what I'm saying. The fellow on the ground who trying to start something and he's getting pushed away. Oh, you don't have this qualification, or you might have had one joint record, so you can't do nothing just because all kind of stuff.
You see,
right? How can they get into this industry?
Let me tell you straight off the bat how it can be done. And what we are doing helps to explain what I'm trying to say. And that is people, the ordinary person in the Bahamas, need to have a voice and they need to raise that voice. The only reason why the Bahamas is where it is now is because all of the many grandmothers and grandaunts and cousins we knew who would, like your grandmother, when you talk about happy, had you all walking around talking about vote, 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 whatever it is, push, push, push. Everyone had a voice and they exercised that. For some reason, the Bahamas and Bahamians have lost their voice. They're not speaking out loud. You see, the issue, Prescott and I have been fighting this fight about natural resources for the last 30 years. So none of the people in government, even when I was in government, could say that they didn't hear, because we were saying it loud. But they did everything to stifle me and Prescott, especially Prescott. They hurt Prescott. And unfortunately, I don't think anyone has really recovered to say, listen, Prescott, we are sorry for what we did, or what was done to you. Because his voice is very important. And so, but all of us, when we speak as one voice, we protect each other. And speaking as one voice, you need to know what is happening. And so when I talked about the history, Prescott was just mentioning about understanding what is in marijuana, for example.
Right.
Pinling, when Sir Lyndon Pinling was around, I know you heard of the Ben of Break speech.
Yep.
The Ben of Break speech came about in Grand Bahama because he found out that the port of Grand Bahama was trying to mine all of the limestone that is in Grand Bahama, and we have a lot. If you all look at a Google map, Prescott shows it quite ably. You look at the Google map, you will see all of the many markings. They dug it so deeply that you can still see where they were planning to mine whole of Grand Bahama.
The whole of Grand Bahama. They
Been
was going
gone.
to destroy the whole island.
Pinling stopped it.
The whole island.
Like Pinling said to Prescott, unfortunately, he didn't get to that stage in his leadership of turning the whole thing into the economic turnaround. And his move was just similar to what Martin Luther King Jr. was trying to do in the United States for Black people. But the reality is we need to speak with one voice. And so at the end of the day, you hear a lot of people talk about natural resources now. Everyone can jump on a bandwagon. Jump on that bandwagon, that we started a long time ago. And
do they even understand it, Code? They're using it just for political platform.
That's true. Yeah, but yeah.
Joke. I mean, we're not.
But that's natural for most people, right?
Yeah, we're not using this for no self-serving agenda.
No.
I want to share something with you about when you talk about definite things. Bahamians could have true independence, but I've been at this now for 33 years, plus 6 years on Defense Force. So that's 39 years, right? Oftentimes, when the information is coming from our own, we don't want to accept it. You know, we could have the Hollow West Coast, the Simonettes, the Bethels. They could be quiet, not saying nothing to Bahamians about all this wealth that they know exists in the country. And yet you telling them for 30 years, right? They question what you're saying.
Yeah.
Now think about this, right? Limestone leaves Grand Bahama and goes into 11 different ports in the United States. And it was brought to Parliament at the cabinet level, and yet it acts as if it's falling on deaf ears. It's not falling on deaf ears, because it goes back to the thing I mentioned earlier. The economic model was never meant for us to ever be or achieve true economic independence. But despite that ideology, as you pointed out with this show, we know that's the past. We know how that thinking is out there. That doesn't mean that we give into it.
Right.
It's just that many persons have given into that. And that's the reason why, even when I went to cabinet 24 years ago, and I want to tell you another unsung hero that Bahamians need to know about. There's a customs officer named Bill Poitier. I spent many, many hours, many days in his office helping to get the data with all the boats coming in. And that's when the fee went from the $150 to $300, right? But he's a customs officer who believed in his country and took the time. Now, if you look at the revenue that from 24 years ago to now, and you say, if we could have done that to bring hundreds of millions of dollars into the economy, yet because we went to cabinet and did it, there wasn't even a gesture of an airline ticket or any recognition. But yet the people who are exploiting us in the billions and billions of dollars, it's okay. And they're getting away with it. They continue to do it. They don't educate the Bahamians that the true wealth. I'll tell you what one of our leaders said to me, Dale and Code. Morton Salt was paying the government not just 10 or 20 years, $10,000 a year going into the public treasury for operating a billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar operation in Inagua. So if you say $10,000 a year divided by 12 months of the year, you can do the math on that. Not even $1,000 a year, maybe 800 and something, whatever it is, right? Now, how is it that you have so little value for yourself as a people and a country that if you run that business in the United States and it's under the 35 to 45% tax bracket, and if they sell in $1 billion worth of salt, right? That means Morton, if you're 35, they have to pay 350 million. If you're in the 45%, that's 450 million. That Morton could pay you 800 and something dollars a month, and they can get away with that. But you got to find out who are the attorneys who are negotiating and whispering in the ears of our political leaders. The same thing with the limestone. It's not worth anything. It's just overrated. But yet you can have ships that cost tens of millions of dollars that are coming into Bahamas, taking this product out, and we don't have the common sense to see that it got to be worth something. These ships cannot stay functioning.
So, Prescott, when you talk about these things, right? And I said this to Uncle, I think it was, who was sitting close to me at one of your presentations. These things are bigger than what most people could even dream of conceptualizing. So, what I want you to do, if you could, is there anything on a smaller scale that Bahamians could tap into? So my question on the screen here says, Bahamians have the skills, etc., which skills, if paired with the right structures, can realistically convert ownership into equity. So my thing is, okay, I have been to school, and there's a bunch of us been to school. Not everybody been to school. My daddy and uncle and those went to school of hard knocks on the street, right? And they were probably more successful than me, right? So I don't think going to school is just the answer by itself. It has to be other things. So the question is, part of it is the match, right? We have to have the right thing that we're pursuing in order to be able, for me, to be successful. I can't be successful at the same things that you are successful at, right? So how do we blend those two things together so people out there?
Very easy. I've given thought to these sectors. I remember doing a presentation to the Council of the Trust. Neil McKinney was the president. And to show you the ideology of these individuals, I said, this fake model of conservation that is practiced in our country, again, it's the model from the global north, enrich the few to the detriment of the many. I said, I would like to make a presentation of a new model of conservation that can empower our citizens from Inagua to Grand Bahama. And I got so much pushback because I said to them, I said, we have most of the marine resources in our countries in the deep water, right? I said, but Bahamians do not have the tools, the skills, the equipment to access this. It doesn't take a lot. You just need to have the right boat for safety. So if someone is fishing in Crooked Island and you know that they go out there in a Boston whaler, no matter what, they're going to be floating, right? But yet they can have an electric reel. They can go down, and they can catch the red snapper, the black snapper, silk snapper, such and such. So therefore, you or Cold Smith has a solar seafood storage facility on these islands where you then can store the seafood properly. So you could create a whole industry empowering people in the community from deep water fishing species. Let's look at the salt industry. You go to Long Key, you go to Auckland, you go Crooked Island, most of the southern Bahamas with limited rainfall. Yet, if you go to every world-class restaurant around the globe, they're using sea salt. It's like diamond, because salt is one of the fifth element of life. You cannot live without it. Yet, we don't realize the entire food industry and the food store, the preservative, salt, in the purest form of it is in the hospital. Yet, if I was in making these decisions, I would say every house in the southern Bahamas, they have a stainless steel thing. You can pump the salt water on it, the salt, the sun evaporation, and you have a national collection going into our salt production.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, every Grammy in every island could get a little check coming in from salt that goes into our national accumulation of export, right? And that don't just stop there. Code is an attorney. We have to go to the point of naming, trademarking, right? So you have from the accountant, from the attorney, everybody benefits from this model where you're giving our people real ownership. We think salt production is just Inagua. One of the biggest salt operations in our country was in the Exumas. All the salt pans are still there in Long Island, diamond crystal salt. Natural salt production in those southern islands, Auckland, Crooked Island, Long Key. You go Meguana. Yet we have been miseducated and realized that human beings cannot live without salt, whether it's preservative. So when you look at big global companies like Cargill, and you ask yourself, they are getting the salt from in our environment. Let me give you an example how the miseducation has been so deep. You see how the president went into Venezuela over oil in the global south? You want to see World War III? You try to tell them in the global north that you ain't shipping no coffee up there. You will literally start World War III. But that's a product that we take for granted, just like our salt. And we don't realize at the end of the day that all the coffee in the world is grown in the global south. But those in the global north, who controlling it?
Right.
The same thing with the salt, the same thing with our marine resources, the same thing with our limestone. All of this wealth we have, just like platinum, gold, and diamond. And the point I'm making to you is we can get our people started in all of these industries that you don't need no millions of dollars of capital.
No.
We can get them started from the small, contributing to the national. And they could go to a country like Japan. There's a particular fruit the Japanese love. You know, they love mangoes, they love grapes, but they have areas in Japan where every household is growing these particular fruits in their yard in small amounts. But guess what? It goes to the national makeup of export. So if the boat is passing Inagua and passing every island in the country, and if we have 10 tons of salt in Long Island, they could stop and pick up, or they could pick up in Crooked Island. That still leads to the national amount being exported from the Bahamas.
Right.
But those people individually are benefiting from the resources of the country.
Historically, I'll say this, Happy. My father, who was from Turks Island, my mother was from Crooked Island, and of course, she spent a lot of time in Long Key, which they call Fortune Island.
Right.
All of these places was where they used to rake salt. They called it raking salt. And Prescott is 100% correct, because the raking of salt is not the natural sea salt, because it is a natural sea salt, sorry. But what happens when the molten salt take it, they send it somewhere and they pasteurize it, put a lot of chemicals in it. So the salt that comes in the salt box is not real salt. This real salt is what we have here. You see a lot of places, I'm sure people see the pink salt now, but this is Himalayan salt. But the point is, the Bahamas has the real raw natural salt. We spend a lot of money to get natural salt.
Right.
And so what Preston is talking about is something that can be done by a lot of people in the Family Islands easily. And it was done before. We used to have a lot of that, and then we moved away from it. And Happy, I'm sure you probably know of some people in your heritage who used to do it.
Yeah. And part of it also is because, there was this promise that everybody going to have a good job and a white picket fence and a house and a little dog maybe and a yard and stuff like that. And I always say, half of these things aren't realistic for everybody to have it. And I'm not saying that somebody is more entitled than the other. It's just that's just how the economics work in our part of the world.
Like you say, some don't even want that. To be honest, some people could live the most luxurious life even without that picket fence.
Right, I agree because right now the smaller my place is, I could live in, the better for me.
Exactly.
That's the way I look at it, right? Because
if they could have, I'll share this with you, a very wealthy two brothers fish. They come to one of my brothers have a lodge. The Cabela's.
Okay.
Cabela's is an outdoor world, one of the largest chain of hunting, fishing stores in America, right? And Jim Cabela said he is most at peace when he's out in the outdoors using an outdoor toilet. but here's somebody who's a billionaire.
Right.
And you know why he would feel that way? Because when they're in the outdoors hunting, out in nature, they understand that is the real value of life for them. Not in their 20-bedroom home, with central air conditioning and so forth. And we think those guys, their whole business model is wrong. So when you go into Cabela's, from the binoculars to the shotgun to the camouflage to the boots, all of their business model is the outdoors.
Yeah.
Out in nature that we take for granted. So imagine if your grandmother raked salt. This is where we didn't take it to the next level. Your grandmother raked the salt on Long Key. Mm-hmm. The Pritchards had a little store on East Street, A.C.'s Pritchard.
Mm-hmm.
The children took it to the next level. We looked at physical work like that as, that's going backwards for me to do. Whereas from raking the salt on Long Key to be now, I'm going to get that salt and I'm going to neem it because it doesn't have a name yet. Mm-hmm. I'm going to package that like Himalayan salt and I'm going to sell that all over the world.
And it will go far away, because people in many other countries, they understand that the boutique type things, if you have something like that and you have it, for example, Bahamas organic or something like that, and then you have that thing out there, eventually it'll take a while to grow. But if the government, this is where the government comes in, don't try to give me and other people a job in government. Yes, those people who are looking for a job, you give them a job if you can get it. But what you should do is, if you find people who have the mindset to do it for themselves on islands, that's where it is. And unfortunately, Happy, we can't get to that stage. And I see from some of the questions you're putting up on your screen, the reality is that some people, one of the first things I learned to do, and I learned this from my granduncles, and they said, listen, Code, before you get a wife, when you get a wife, you must have a house to take her into. And that's the mindset I had. Mm-hmm. And I had my house and to make sure my wife came into it. And I didn't. Luckily for me, I had the mindset of how to do it, and I got it done without having to borrow money to get the house. But I know not everyone will be able to do what I did. But you start small and you grow. And what we should do, if we had the right kind of mindset, like some of the many countries, like Libya was in Africa, and many other countries, they would do what they need to do to help their people to get where they need to get to. We and the Bahamas, and this is a good time to talk about it because this is an election year. And so I would want to have my voice heard by the political organization that I was a part of. You can't just simply talk this talk. All of the 3,000 acres of land they give to this IG group or whatever it's called in Meguana, rather than doing all of that, you say to the Meguana, listen, we would not give you that amount of land for any port unless you could show us how 40% or 50% of the money generated from that port, where people are going to somewhere else, is going to come to the Bahamian public. Like we talk about the Sovereign Bird Fund. It can be done.
Which port you think they need 3,000 acres? That's a mining operation.
I don't know.
All right, so whatever that is, we can find out in time, right? So
yeah, you can find out.
We have to find out now. We find out now, Happy, not in time. Now.
But even if we find out now,
no, I would go.
That's a conversation that I don't want to go down right now, right? So
okay. I understand.
So instead of seeing the private sector as gatekeepers, right? Because I always ask them why, if they complain about the quality of labor coming to them, why they don't go and put some of their money in to the school so that the quality of food coming out would be higher, right? But so then they go mute, quiet, quickly. But how can Bahamian businesses, because we have a lot of small businesses in the Bahamas, how can Bahamian businesses become platforms to help others step up in this ownership scenario?
Share. Like, you may call me a socialist, but you have to share. And the sharing is not necessarily your resources or your income or your profit. The sharing is information, Happy. Mm-hmm. Information is key. Like what Prescott and a few of his fly fishing guys, I'm not a fly fishing guy, but I know the business. I was with them from the start. The reality is they went out on their own dime, Happy. Mm-hmm. So if Prescott could have been a millionaire many times over. I can tell you.
I spend the money fighting for Bahamians.
Exactly. And so he go there and make sure that people who the other day, Prescott and a number of people, they went to a factory in Central America to see how they could get boats to come here to make sure they could be sold at lower prices for people who, young men especially, who want to do fly fishing. Mm-hmm. So you have to share your knowledge.
When you finish, I'm going to weigh in on that.
No, go ahead, Prescott. Please go ahead.
Yeah, because when you say share, right, you have to also the challenges. When I built Stafford Creek Lodge, I never built this as no personal business, right? So I built it to do exactly what Code pointed out. But here are the challenges with that. Anytime you challenge a model that is about bringing real ownership to our people, it is met with intense opposition.
Yes.
So when I first went to the government in Belize, they had a little over 24 guides, right? And from we were training guides, even though Code mentioned the number 400, which is accurate, to be honest with you, it's an embarrassment, the lack of support that we have received and the pushback from administration to administration on this issue. Because Belize today have over 1,000 full-time fly fishing guides and 2,000 plus with part-time guides, and they don't have 1/10 of our fishing grounds.
No.
I'm just going to ask you what was the size of the thing. Yeah.
This is the point I'm making to you. So when you look and see the pushback and say, why are all the tourism associations fighting it? Why is the National Trust fighting it? Why are all these organizations that claim to be about conservation and empowering people? Because you were challenging the model that is never about real ownership. And so when we went, I mean, the legislation passed under Christie, but I am very disappointed that even when that legislation was passed, the association never received 1 cent of support. Yet one administration after the next gives $1 million a year to the National Trust.
Who does
The
nothing.
association that produces the most revenue in the entire Bahamas on the Family Islands is still trying to figure out how are you going to fund it to do the job. So you have to personally use our resources from my lodge, other board members. Code may be embarrassed to tell you this, but if he had given us a bill, it wouldn't be just $500,000-$600,000 for the legal work that he has done helping these structures. And we went to many attorneys who didn't want to take the time out. And so when you talk about sharing, that's the $1 trillion question that you asked. You're talking about sharing with a model that leads to ownership of our people. And that's the challenge what we face. If we are going to achieve true majority rule, we need Bahamians who are going to share their knowledge and their skills with the
resources
that leads to ownership at the different levels. You don't need $1 million. They can start that salt operation at a small scale. They can start catching those red snappers, but give them the tools and the skills that they need, like we tried to do through the fly fishing industry, which still is being met with great opposition.
It still is. And there's a lot of pushback that we've been getting for many years. I've been in the background, but I've been there. The reality is every leader that comes into the Bahamas government has given some measure of, yes, I'm going to support you, but it doesn't really turn into something dynamic or as dynamic as it should be. And so I would like to encourage all of the people who are putting themselves forward as political leaders in the Bahamas for this election, they have to seriously examine the environment conservation and protection process that we have and see if it doesn't work. And like Prescott said, the people who want it to be the old way, I mean, in terms of how we did not have the kind of support for the environment protection, if they were to stand back and allow the people who know and who are prepared to, who've been doing it for a long time, not just the last year, not the last 10 years, for the last 30 plus years, who've been doing it all this time, let them come forward and advance and advise. And if you want to go political, I'm sure the FNM has some people in FNM, and the COI got at least 1 or 2 people in there, and the PLP certainly got people in the PLP who can say what needs to be said to make sure that each of these organizations do what they need to do and have a real plan. Not just say we're going to do it, say you're going to do it, but also give us the way you're going to get it done.
I want to go on record and say something that needs to be said. And I said to my Defense Force colleague who was calling me, you got to be careful what you say. And I said, look, my life is just speaking the truth, okay? I want to go on record that if Hubert Minnis was listening to this, and I'm hoping that it is sent to him, if Perry Christie was listening to what I was going to say, and Hubert Ingram, because the current Prime Minister term is not finished yet. From I was dealing with this issue of fighting for Bahamians to be owners of the largest flats fishing resources on the planet, not a single one of them have stood in front of me globally on this issue. So the current Prime Minister, is not too late for him to do it, okay?
No.
Minister Christie, Minister Ingram, and Hubert Minnis, they failed us on this issue. And I know why, because of the tense battle and pushback. Just how you see what's going on in Venezuela or what's going on and people are afraid to speak up, that's the fear our people have, We'll play politics at IDB and World Bank level, but when it comes to the true wealth of this country, we want to tiptoe around the issue. And I'm saying to you that the current Prime Minister can make some bold moves beyond what he has made, because he was the first leader to give the association that the only time it's ever received $1. Okay? So I want to give credit where it's due. Alfred Gray,
Yeah.
historic move. He fought to get the legislation passed. Pierre Depuch, he laid the foundation for, if he did not stand in 1994, the industry would have gone, we would have lost it from back then. So we have to give credit where it's due. But, and I said this to the current Prime Minister and the current Minister of Tourism, I said, Mr. Cooper, you are now the 8th Minister of Tourism I'm dealing with, and you can make history and be the first to support a tourism model that is about Bahamian ownership. I dealt with the 7 before, and not one of them supported the fight for a model of tourism that was about Bahamian ownership. So we can't sugarcoat and dance around an issue like this, because the powerful show that you're having dealing with majority rule, we are never going to get across that finish line if we're not able to reflect every year and say, what are the key things that needs to happen? If I was the Prime Minister, I would declare what they declared in opposition. They said that the fly fishing industry should be reserved for Bahamians while in opposition.
Yes.
They have not said it yet. It's not too late, okay? Same thing when we talk about, when you make that declaration, again, like the stroke of a pen when it comes to our San, our Aragonite, you then transfer ownership to the citizens of the country when it comes to its number one resource space, which is 85% of the marine environment and the resources that are there within. That's how serious the issue is. Unless you are bold to speak, not speak around the issue, it means when me, you, and Code are no longer here, Dale, and they build another 50 marinas in this country, and you say to yourself, you can't find 5 Bahamians that own one, and they build another 50 fishing lodges in this country, and you say the Bahamians who was in the industry, like Prescott I, he's gone, and now they own all of them, like in Abaco and Grand Bahama, and in South Andros, it's happening. It's because of how we just dance around the issue.
And
You see what I mean?
it is so very important, Happy.
One final thing, Accord, I want you to finish here.
Go ahead.
Let me show you you remember when the Dutch company Happy and Code came in and dredged the harbor in Inagua and Ragged Island for the Defense Force base?
Yeah.
Now you realize, here is Mr. Christie era. You could spend $200 million on boats. You could dredge in Inagua, and you couldn't dredge a space big enough to say, I'm going to let a Bahamian own a marina in Inagua and in Ragged Island. And even if it was a 20-slip marina, guess what? You would have Bahamian captains. You would create a whole economy around that, whole industry. And guess what? That's foreign exchange coming into the public treasury. So if you're going to spend millions of dollars for the Dutch company to go to Inagua and Ragged Island and dredge, why couldn't they dredge big enough space to say, the money we spending for dredging, just by us doing a 25, 30-slip marina that is owned by Bahamians, the government would have gotten a return on its investment and create jobs for young Bahamian men and women to be professional maritime experts, to be mates on the yacht, could be chefs, you create a whole industry from the food stores in Inagua to the souvenirs, the gifts, the T-shirt with the Wahoo on it. So these are the things, Dale, we're talking about that doesn't take a lot to do, but you need to have the will to deliberately empower our people. You can't.
Right.
I said this to the current Minister of Tourism. Have you helped one Bahamian to own a fishing lodge?
The sad thing is, Happy Prescott. In one word, as a trained economist, because I am also an economist. I have my first studies in economics. The thing is, we are so afraid of the word protection, and sometimes people use it as a ism. They say protectionism to make it a negative thing. The reality is, a small country like the Bahamas, I believe our population may now be about maybe 500,000 people, somewhere around thereabouts. Now, we have to protect what we have. You talked about the Immovable Properties Act that was removed sometime after Ingram came into office in 92. The reality is we need to put it back. We need to put it back in place. It's not difficult for Mr. Philip Brave Davis to at least table that now and pass that before election. It could be done. Put it back in place, because I talked about having your house for your wife and your spouse to come into. The reality is we can't do it because we are sort of priced out of the market because of the way the foreign people come in with the big monies and they take it away from us. And so we don't have the chance to buy our own land and our own place. So a young man who is working very hard, making enough money to be able to buy a property, even at today's rate, it's hard for him to do it because he has a lot of the vicissitudes of life to live with. Now, if you have, for example, when it comes to in labor issues, when we're talking about majority rule that comes out of the labor movement, we don't have a decent minimum wage in the Bahamas. We don't. You know what it is for you to say, if you were to, me, you, Happy, and Prescott have to go and find a job, the minimum wage is but $3 an hour. You just can't generate enough money from that to live in the Bahamas today.
Yeah,
so,
right.
So protection, the whole protection process, we need to go back to that. We are small enough to protect ourselves. Just pass the law and tell people, no, you have to do it. When the boating come in, pay the fees. If you don't want to pay it, fine, you could go to another place. We have no difficulty with that. You do what you got to do, we can do what we do.
And we have, excuse me, we have so many, what is it? Tourism is $1 trillion business, and there's a couple billion people in tourism already, and I keep saying that we haven't scratched the surface of that. So if people don't want to come here, then there's going to be plenty more people who come in. So I never feel afraid of that. So, but listening to what Prescott just said and what you said, the question on the screen right now is even more important, because if we're that far behind, to me, this even drives home even more so. Being a pioneer of digital from the early 80s, and driving it straight through to I left BTC and somewhat in the private sector, in the consulting sector. Digital, the World Bank and the ITU says is something like 1,000 times greater return on investment from a capital point of view than brick and mortar. So my question is, what, Prescott, is out there that this digital generations that we have who only like fish out of water if they outside the digital environment, what is available to them that they could use digital to try and catapult ourselves back forward? Because one time ago in telecoms, we used to be ahead of even the United States and Canada in certain aspects. I can't tell you that still exists today, right? But the potential is there. So what we have to do is figure out how we can match those skills that they're born with what is happening out there that you're all talking about, in order to generate wealth. Go ahead.
Very, very powerful thing. And, I'm done hearing politicians talk. I remember one of our leaders say, the craft industry is a $200 million industry. And I'd say, well, what are you doing to protect the silver top? And then what are you doing to take all the Bahamians for the talent who can make these incredible baskets, to use what you're talking about digitally so that they can build the websites, and they can sell their products to the world. They can trademark. So we have to be able to mesh these things together, just like the industry that I'm in. When you talk about fly fishing, we have an environment in the Bahamas through your question here, using the digital, and may you mesh the two of these, that we could sell so many things to the world
Yes.
that features what's unique about the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a company you can look up called Guy Harvey, right? And from the slippers to the boat shoes to the various dress, the children's clothing, all displaying the marine environment. And yet you think this guy comes from Jamaica. If he could do that with one little island, and what about us with 700 islands, 2,300 keys? Where have you ever, Coffee Dale, have you ever seen drink some tea in the morning, Lipton or whatever it is, bush tea, or a cup that has some grunts, pictures of grunt on it, or a turbot, or a lean snapper, or the coloring book for the children? So we're talking about whole industries using digital. But again, we have to get serious about it. We can't just be paying lip service to these things. When we talk about trademark, we have to make investment. We got so much talent, Bahamian. Don't be dumbing down our children to say, if you want to be an artist, that's not an area worth getting into. It's because we have all of these barriers that's holding our people back. So when I hear them talk about the potential in these areas, and you see we haven't made the connection relating to your question, right? A guy said to me that he said, Prescott, in our tourism industry, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of souvenirs are being sold, and you realize more than 90% of them are not; those companies are not owned by Bahamians.
That's why I was saying the tourism business is some couple trillion, right? So we got to tap into that. Yeah.
You have to say, we call this our number one industry, but think about to what extent the white Bahamians actually own this industry. And just focusing on getting our people in ownership, making the connection, what you talk about digitally, developing the products, marketing the products all over the world at the end of the day. So the same way we could buy a book with Barney coloring for, why can't a child in China be getting coloring books showing all of the marine life we have in
Bahamas? Yeah.
Exactly. It can be done. See, education is very important. And I know when we talk about education from a governmental point of view, we're only talking about the Ministry of Education as we know it today. We're talking about going to school. Yeah, that's very important. But what about teaching people how to do these things, including the digital work, rather than the Bahamas government spending a lot of money for nonsense? Why can't the Bahamas, for example, this government now, for the next budget, which comes up in June of this year,
April,
especially if they are successful themselves, and if not, put the pressure on who could be successful, if not the PLP. And we have to deal with teaching people about the digital infrastructure, to use your term. The reality
is start by getting all them colonial maps out of every school in the country.
I get to that in a second. I know I can get in plenty of trouble for what I'm about to say, Happy. And I hope I don't get you in trouble, but the reality is this. See, now I have called for the Bahamas to become a real free country, for us to move away from the queen this and the king that. When I was in high school, I got in plenty of trouble. But the one person who supported me when I was in high school, because I didn't want to learn about the king and queen, the Queen Charlemagne, the King Charlemagne, and all those people. I didn't want to do it historically. I got in trouble. I was sent to the office to meet Ernest Monka. I didn't know Mr. Monka had the reality in terms of his view about having Bahamian history as a part of his whole mantra.
Right.
The reality is I was able to do what I had to do, stay out of the history class, And I was told, "Oh, you're not going to make it in life." I said, "I'll be fine. I just don't want to learn anything more but Queen Elizabeth." And now you have, can you imagine, Happy, Prescott, this young man who is William, being a king that we have to bow down to and say, and we can swear allegiance to him when we go in our parliament, to our people?
God, I don't have respect for them. I know what they did all through Africa.
Yeah, I mean, all kind of things is done, and we don't know about it all. But what I'm saying, though, is that rather than spending millions of dollars on nonsensical things, perhaps the government will say, listen, we are going to have in our budget $20 million, where we're going to buy laptops for everyone. We just went through the whole pandemic. And if you didn't have enough money to buy a computer or a laptop, you couldn't even get online to do your normal business in your normal life. Everyone should have been able to do this. And so the digital infrastructure is very important. And you need to teach young people how to do it. My son just finished high school about a year and a half ago, and he just started a business. I was so ashamed, man. He was able to get all of his stuff all set up before me, who've been in this business for almost 30 years, not been able to do mine. But he had the natural knack to be able to do digital work. And in fact, what we just came from Prescott's place about a month ago, and he was on the dock fly fishing, man. So and that's good.
Took him 5 minutes, and most anglers I fish don't get it in 5 years.
Yeah, young people. Yep. Yeah, no, my thing on that whole thing is this. It's a simple thing, right? Maybe it's my engineering brain at work. We don't agree with plenty of things that existed, that happened to us in the past, that happened in these different places. But when I listen to people talk about let's just move from our system and move to a republic, and I'm like, why? Why move to a republic that has similar problems and so forth? Why not design our own system that is more appropriate for us? Right?
Why, Happy? Why should we believe like the young people, especially when I was 14, 15, I had a problem that I had to say, I'm going to model myself after someone I could never be. I could never, ever be British royalty. It can't be.
Right.
Can't be.
No, I understand all that, right? And
if you give people, Happy, the opportunity to understand who they are and for them to be proud about who they are, it opens great opportunities. And so with that is part of the reason why a republic is better. You see, and I don't care what anyone says to me. If you now know, and I say, I am who I am.
My only point code is why it only have to be a Westminster system or republic. Why we can't design something that works for us. That's all I'm saying.
Maybe
I'm not against either one, but my thing is just moving for moving's sake. That's like somebody come to me and say, we need to vote for somebody else because the two parties ain't do nothing for us, so forth, right? But it is that. So that's what I'm saying. We just need to make it make sense when we move, right? We have to have intentional thought, as I say on the show. We got pause first, listen, because if you can't do nothing if you ain't listening. If people only talking sake, right?
All of your life and mine, I'm sure, they talk about self-determination. A self-determinative thing requires you to know who you are. You must know who you are, and you have to be proud about who you are. I don't care what anybody says to me, even though they...
Everybody freeze. Folks, I don't know if the internet overheating. This conversation is getting, but these guys...
Queen Charlotte, they talk about, was a black woman who actually originated from Africa. But when you look at it, what do? They paint her as a white woman. They can't ever have a queen sit as a black woman. And so at the end of the day, why should I say to my children, be the greatest you could be? And the only great thing that they could possibly be is as high as what we are here in the Bahamas. And so what we are here in the Bahamas, we need to be told and taught. We need to be self-determinative. We need to be proud about who we are. The Bahamas government must protect what we have. And when it comes to the environment, we must fight for it without a tooth and nail. We must do all we can do.
One of my best teachers in high school was Capt Francis, right?
Yes.
Because we were the top math class. The only thing I was top in, right? Everything else I graduate. Thank you, Lottie. But so if the period was an hour and 10 minutes or whatever it was, we would take like 20 minutes to the curriculum and master it. And then he used to use the rest of the class to do what I call civics. I didn't know what it was at the time, but he'd take us down all these walks and roads and stuff like that. And so that's where I didn't like history, but that's where I got into understanding, at least tying that with what my grandparents and mothers and families were saying. But the thing is, we only make up a small set of our society. So the thing is, we have to find ways to help elevate the rest, right? And so when we look at the question on the screen, when we say not every opportunity is individual, where do corporate and community-based ownership models make the most sense in the Bahamas, right? And I won't keep you on much longer after this. Yeah.
Finance, money. Because the cooperative credit union movement, and my cousin and my very good friend and Prescott's friend as well, Dr. Anthony Hamilton will tell you, it is the best thing that came to the Bahamas, and it was passed in law. We need to make it stronger going forward, and we need to.
So where would they get the money from, Code? Where would you give them the money? Because what you're saying makes a lot of sense. But where do they get it?
The money, first of all, comes from the people who participate in. For example, you have a corporate credit union for police officers, and they put a lot of money in it. You have for almost every institution, every area that we know about. The teachers' credit union has been around for umpteen years. One of my close friends in high school just retired from it, but she's been around when there was a little small room on Jerome Avenue. Is now a big building there, as you know, on the corner of East Street and East-West Highway. The reality is that the money is there. We just have to do what we have to do, and then the government needs to subvent these things.
The reason I'm asking you the question is I'm agreeing with what you're saying, but I'm thinking if we tie our citizens to where you can empower them to get the revenue stream from the real wealth, many resources of the country, it means that they can support the unions, pay their dues. That then goes to having hundreds of millions of dollars that they can give loans for major ventures that helps empower us even further. But if you have a declining economic base where the average person is only living from paycheck to paycheck, it means that they are finding great difficulty even being able to build a union. You see what I mean? It's like you just say, I'm going to squeeze all the members in my church to throw, every time they get $5. Why not help them get hundreds of dollars so that they could give more? So I'm on the same page with what you're saying, but I think like anything, we have to connect the citizens to being empowered through these different sectors.
Just how, Prescott, the teachers, when they get their salary, a certain amount of money goes to the credit union automatically. I mean, the credit union now, I'm not talking about a normal employment or labor union. It goes naturally. The government of the Bahamas also must say, we will have legislated that from our coffers, me, the government, X amount of dollars goes toward that stuff, or whatever the stuff is we're talking about. We're talking about the sovereign wealth fund. Let's put it in place, a real sovereign wealth fund now. We need to put it in place. We need to do it. And so, unfortunately, there's a lot of lip service. I know when I was
lip service code. See, that's why I don't just listen to what politicians say. Right? In 1991, the national debt of the Bahamas was $800 and something million. We are 13 billion today. So if you look at it and say, how are we measuring this model of success? If you say, well, I can look around and I can see they build a Ministry of Education building. We know 20,000+ civil servants have to be paid, but the government has to find the revenue from somewhere. And if Mr. Pindling could be running the country and had 800+ million, right? Let's say you had 140,000 citizens back then, or 200,000, right? So now you double it. So if you double the national debt, you double the population, but you weigh more than double the debt. So you have to look and say, am I really being successful if I have $13 billion in debt at the end of the day? And I think so when a Bahamian was born during Mr. Pendling era, they had $6,000 debt on them, every citizen. Today, they have 30-something thousand. So when we talk about majority rule, we want to have a party and dance around the issues and don't want to have conversations like this to say, how do we go from 13 billion to getting it down to 2 or 3 billion and getting $13 billion into a sovereign wealth fund at the end of the day? And unless we are deliberate with these things, it could be another 5 years and we wouldn't put another dollar in a sovereign wealth fund. And I know all this talk about carbon credit and this one trying to lobby the Bahamas, but that's because the big countries who have been the biggest polluters on the planet, all of a sudden, they're trying to find a way to use the natural environment to offset their destruction. So they now got to come in and tell us how much our seagrass is worth, how much our forest is worth, as if it's only valuable when they tell you it's valuable. I always knew it was valuable. It's up to us to leverage these things in our own interests so that we don't have $13 billion national debt.
But Prescott, you're correct. Back in 2003, when I was in office at the time, I remember going to South Africa for the World Summit. And in South Africa, Dr. Donald Cooper, who was the undersecretary at the time, responsible for the BEST Commission administratively, I said to him, because he was the technical person who was in charge, the minister who was in charge was Fred Mitchell. He was, of course, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And I said, listen, we need to find out a way of monetizing our environment. And that's when I learned for the first time about carbon credits. And from that, we saw, of course, the seagrass. Prescott, you talked about it the other day. We have the seagrass. You're talking about a lot of things in the Bahamas, what we can actually monetize, because countries around the world, because they're doing, Prescott said, because they're doing so many bad things in the environment, they would give millions and millions of dollars to people who are keeping the environment. Brazil gets millions and millions of dollars all the time. We actually have, right here in the Bahamas, as you know, we have in Andros, we have the Ortec base. Been there for ages, only giving the Bahamas pittance. We need to make them pay billions of dollars to be in the Bahamas. And even though they say they're doing something secretive, we can't have nothing secret in the Bahamas. Because if you look at it carefully, and I'm not a scientist.
Okay, seem like you freeze.
Yeah.
Prescott drop off.
Yeah, who found with cancer? Why is it? I look at some fish I got the other day from Andros, and the fish was those small frizzle of fish. And I'm wondering, I said, why is it that I could get a different kind of fish from Auckland's and Crooked Island from there's going on in Andros? I don't know exactly what they're doing in the tongue of the ocean, but it ain't something that is good, you know. But the point is, we need to keep the environment the way it is, and people who are doing stuff in there, we need to know exactly what it is. What are you doing? You know, I mean, we need to put some sensors in the water to see when it is they explode anything. If they explode anything in our waters, we need to know. We need to know.
Where you get that fish from?
Say again?
Where you get that fish from?
I would say Fresh Creek, but I get in trouble if I say that.
Hey, serious, man. I gotta know.
You bring that with him. So, the big question on the table that if the young Bahamians is watching tonight, or not if, but we know they're watching too. what is one concrete opportunity you would encourage them to explore if they want to help build the new built environment? We didn't talk about the new built environment, but that's what I coined in terms of where we want to go, right? Based on, and I came out of the COVID, where the government was talking about the new normal, and I'm like, even before they got to the new normal, I was like, let's design where we want to go now, versus just follow the path of what other people were saying they want to go.
Well, why can you explain the new built environment that you're talking about?
All right, let me put it on the screen for you. I thought you all.
The terminology. I don't know the terminology.
Let me see if I could get it, something. So that's the definition of new built environment. The new built environment is the political, economic, and social environment of the society formulated through intentional thought and action designed to create the greatest opportunities to build the highest quality of life for citizens, residents, and those subscribing to and supporting the culture of the 242, and which will provide sustainability for generations to come, right? So that's what came out of that. I built it off of 5 pillars: sun, sand, sea, people, and digital. And the sun, sand, and sea, you'll see from that there, if you could read it, you should be able to, has nothing to do with tourism, sun, sand, and sea. It's all about light industries, what we've been talking about all day, from this things in the ocean and so forth, and soul in the sky and all that kind of thing. That's the fundamental by which the new built environment is built on, for these 5 pillars. And from which Prescott was saying and you were saying, we've been there before. They're saying exactly 100% new. It's just we need to formulate it and build it back into some structured way. Where
Here is a question I'm going to ask the Bahamians who are tuning in, and this applies to all of us looking in the mirror. If we are to save the Bahamas for generations of Bahamians going forward, we have to be intentional with decolonizing our education system, because 85% of our country is the marine environment and 85% of our people can't swim. We're supposed to be the maritime giant in our region, because Bahamas is unique. It doesn't just have an island like Jamaica or Dominican Republic. If you look at the geography of the Bahamas, it is absolutely a huge country. It is just that we are an ocean state. And so the psyche of the change of how we educate our people, we are not some insignificant bunch of small, it's just most of the country is in the marine environment. And we cannot just look at these shallow waters as being insignificant. We are the nursery system for the Caribbean and fisheries all over the world. So there are thousands of South Africans in our country on these yachts, from New Zealand, from Canada, and show me 200 Bahamian captains. So just fast forward that to say, you got 50,000 yachts coming. What happens when there's 100,000? What happens when they build another 50 marinas? Are the young men just supposed to be running around in Beantown shooting up each other? And our women are afraid of the water? We have to change the psyche. God has placed us in a country that's an ocean state. And so it isn't just being the captain running the mega yacht or owning it, or the big commercial ship. It is being able to look at all of the digital creations in that space. Why is Google, why is GPS, the Garmin, Magellan, they all through our country earning billions of dollars? You think these sailing yachts just come here and they idle? They're mapping out every inch of our seabed. Where are the Bahamians in these spaces? They don't even realize the opportunities that are available for them. And we cannot have children going to school. Every Bahamian child should know about longitude and latitude and learn about navigation, not as a secondary issue. Because once you teach them how to catch their own fish, how to navigate, and I'm using the catching fish as an analogy, they begin to see everything different around them, the opportunities that are available. Most of our citizens are blinded to the reality of the country they live in. We're still talking about sun, sand, and sea and 700 islands. It's a total lie. It's just a tourism marketing machine. And even that model, what does the Staffordson say? You don't have to educate them to learn how to make a bed and serve. So there is dignity in making up that bed. There's dignity in serving if you have a sense of ownership in your country. I don't have to feel subservient for bringing you and Code your coffee while you're sitting on the deck, because I have a sense of real pride and ownership in my country. But we will not be able to hold on to the Bahamas thinking that just as you have 3,000 foreign homes in Exuma running as illegal businesses, what happened when it goes to 100,000 homes and 200,000 homes and they own all of the marinas? So then what are we going to be doing as the citizens of this country? And this is the direction we're heading in if we are not deliberate in shifting the mindset of our people to realize that, you know what, I can be an attorney, I can be a doctor, I can be a lawyer, but I still need to learn how to navigate. So just how important it is to learn how to drive a vehicle, learning how to run a boat. See that as a priority.
Yes. What I can tell you, I'll add to what Prescott said, is that the real initiative, Happy, as I said before, is about protection, but also enforcement. And we have to not be afraid or shame as a government, whichever government is in power, I don't care who it is, to say, listen, we are going to now shut down all of those houses in Exuma throughout the Bahamas. And we have a lot of them all over. They're running their own hotel business. And they're not paying a normal fee to have a hotel room, which you have to pay. Is a law. They're not paying. They market using the digital internet and all that stuff, their house, and they say you could come in, you could fly fish. And people do it. They're doing it, a lot of it. We need the Minister of Tourism, who happens to be the Member of Parliament for Exuma, to understand and say, listen, you know what I'm doing? I'm going to have some people sit down, tell me all of the houses that are operating in the Bahamas as bed and breakfast, or in his islands, a bed and breakfast. And to have them show me that they have a proper, they have the proper licenses to do so, and that they're paying their fair share of the taxes for the hotel room. They have to. If you don't do it.
What I want to ask you and Dale and all who are listening, what do you think is the number one resource that makes all of these foreign homes built in our country? What is the number one resource that gives them that value?
Of course, the marine environment.
You answered it. What is the thing with the cruise ship industry?
The marine environment. All of it is the same thing.
Atlantis, Bahama, and yet we undervalue it. At the end of the day. None of it will have any value without recognizing. And yet, why are we not getting our citizens to see that that's our oil well, that's our diamond mine?
Because of the mindset, unfortunately, the people who are out there teaching us about what we are supposed to do.
So now you're getting to what I was hoping you already get to long time ago. But we ain't go for another 2 hours. I have to bring her back where we can touch into that, because the mindset is the big thing about what this show would be about. In terms of, you have to address that. People, to me, are our greatest resources, and our biggest challenge right now is the way we think, right? Once we have a little bit of porridge on the table, we happy. We only need to be C grade, unless If you want everybody to follow, you better win, because we don't follow losers, right? So, but it's a mindset, and to me, half of the battle is what our attitude is towards these things.
And that I'm happy is all of what I was talking about from the time we've been on this show. When I talk about having one voice, when I talk about having a protection mindset,
Yeah.
when I talk about all those things that we addressed today, all of what Prescott talking about is that we have to come together. We talk about cooperatives come together. We have to put some pressure on the parties that are governing the Bahamas. They are not doing it right. Full stop. Across the board. And they have to change their way. Going into 2026, they have to change their way. The workers of the Bahamas are very important. We cannot bypass bringing up if you want people to go to work, make sure the living wage, there's a living wage, not just a low wage.
Low wage, yeah.
But
minimum wage.
Not just a minimum wage. So at the end of the day, you cannot have our people go into the hotels. I know of many people. I was in a hotel at one point in time, and they worked for 20, 30 years, and they were making what, $300 or $400 a week. That can't cut it in today's world.
Right.
We need to find the things that can help people to understand that they are on track. Like we talked about salt for a moment there, to get people to, not just about salt. I know in Long Island you have weaving. In Crooked Island, when my mother was around, they made money enough from sisal. I don't even know if most Bahamians know what sisal is, but from sisal, and they made that so they could be able to send my uncle to college. Okay, and they did it.
That's the natural material they use to make ropes. So.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the point is that we need to look at, and I'm not calling these things light industries. These are things that can be peculiar to a particular community, and we know the people from those communities knows exactly what they have, what they do. So we need to get that going. The Bahamas government need to spend our money collectively better. And I'm not talking about spending it to pay for this and that and to have.
No, I know what you mean.
But to say, listen, what we do, you talk about the sovereign wealth fund, let the Bahamas government contribute its portion on a monthly basis.
There's this book called Cost of Vision, right? So it's a cross between fighting costs with innovation, right? And so you have another one called consumerism. What is it? Not consumerism.
Consumerism.
It's a cross between being a producer and a consumer, right? So, these are things. So this is attitude changes in the way we look at things. We can't just look at it and say, "Oh, we are successful because we drive in a Honda," right? And half of the people get the Honda, which is a different issue altogether. Yeah.
Here's the elephant in the room that we don't like to touch.
I want the audience to answer these questions, Prescott, on the screen, right? Okay. Even if you don't answer it today, take it home with you and try because I think these questions, if we answer these questions, they will then start to focus on the things that Code was just speaking about. Go ahead.
I was saying to you, I always wanted to know as a child why we were treated a certain way. And I was always passionate about geography. And God had it. I didn't even understand the dynamics of it. You come here in my home, you see charts, navigation charts on the wall, a map that shows the accurate size of countries on Earth, not the Mercator's chart, which is in all of our schools. But if we are miseducated, and I'm going to go back to your area expertise when I talk about the digital space, there is enough available to us through technology that we should have a clear understanding to be able to free our minds about what colonialism, what racism, what feeling inferior was really all about. It was always about resources. Mm-hmm. And if you don't understand the President of the United States who talking about Greenland with rare earth minerals and the oil in Venezuela and all its minerals, and to free our minds to know that it doesn't matter whether you are light or darker or whatever it is. Get that that was all designed as Europeans used that model to extract and control resources from the global south. But there's enough available to us with technology where we see leaders standing up in Burkina Faso to say, you're not going to be taken in Niger, you're not going to be taking the uranium for the next 200 years while our people are in darkness. You're shipping it to the global north. You're not going to be taking the coffee. You're not going to be taking the platinum out of South Africa. Which and yet, this is what we're facing in the Bahamas. They're extracting from our marine environment. They're using our marine environment. They're using our mineral resources. And we should understand that unless we switch the model and create one of local ownership, that we could never achieve the finish line to true majority rule.
Yeah.
And so we don't have to guess this anymore when you can say, Code mentioned earlier, but feeding ourselves. What did Abraham Traore do? He didn't just talk about agriculture. He bought the farming equipment. He said, we're going to process the tomatoes.
They put it in play.
Produce that. We're going to make we're growing all this mango that's going to rot. We're going to do the mango juice. We can do these things in our country.
Yes.
Most of the marine, and like I said with you earlier, I can go back and show you the original letter I wrote when I sat on the council of the Bahamas National Trust, because the politicians didn't know what to do with me. I wasn't cutting no deal and compromising when it comes to empowering Bahamians. So the cabinet voted to put me there. And when I wrote to them about how you can develop these industry and Code, and happy to see the pushback that I received from the established model, economic model, it showed me clearly that they view our marine space and resources to facilitate their real estate sales.
Yes.
And only the rich and famous should come in and eat fresh tuna and catch the fresh wahoo, and our people should be eating it out of the can on the side of the road, out of a styrofoam container.
There should be a moratorium put on the Bahamas National Trust. The government of the Bahamas should not give any more land to the Bahamas National Trust. Because what the Bahamas, I used to sit on the board as well, and I left because I saw some things I didn't like. They talk about protected areas, and they have protected some of the Bahamas National Trust supposedly has some land on the western side of Andros. Very dynamic area.
5,000 acres, Code. But the point I was making, Code, about this is these are lived experience to show you that when the leader of Burkina Faso and Niger and them could get together and say, we are going to reverse that model that leads to not just shipping the raw gold out. We're going to process it, and it's going to lead to empowering our people so we can build hospitals, better schools, and so forth. And I'm saying to you is, when I went to them challenging the tourism model and I saw the opposition, when I went to them challenging the conservation model and saw the opposition, I knew that I was on the right track. And that is what took me on a global search of resources to realize that most of the living things on Earth is where we are from on the planet. And when they designed the system to say, I can build a Mercedes in Germany, but I get the mineral resources out of Africa. I can build that Porsche. I can build those jets in France, but I'm getting the mineral resources from the global south. And we have, through your expertise digitally, all of the evidence to show you geographically that the myths, the lies we were taught was all designed about keeping you at a certain level economically. So it doesn't matter that Haiti has the gold, Jamaica has the bauxite, the Bahamas has the marine resources, the limestone, the salt. It's who's controlling those resources and the economic model of which the development takes place around them, who's benefiting from it. So if you look at, let's build another 10,000 homes in Exuma, and you say to yourself, they then providing 20,000 room accommodations, but you find out that Bahamians only own 5% of them. Then who controls your tourism industry? You see, we have offshore banking. Bahamians have some jobs in the bank, but who's actually client facing with the clients who are bringing in the wealth from their platinum mines in South Africa, in Brazil, in Central South America. And we could go on and on with the model, but the point I'm making to you and those who are listening is there is sufficient evidence out there that we don't have to have this continued mindset of feeling inferior and guessing what we have to do in order to reverse our status and achieve true majority rule. One final thing I will say to you. You have a situation right now in this country that from I was doing this work for 30 something years, one of the most treasonous things that I see taking place now is those who control the economy through the port and distribution in Nassau. They want to put the final nail in generations of Bahamians unborn. And that is the port of Morgan's Bluff. Why am I bringing this issue up? Because all you're talking about developing industries and opportunities for Bahamians would be to nothing. It says, he who controls your ports controls your economy. Why is Morgan's Bluff significant? Clarence A. Bain came out of the United States during the civil rights, and they came here and helped to fight for majority rule. They changed the land policy in 1967. It meant that Andros, which has 40-something% of the land for the entire Bahamas, largest pine forest, largest amount of arable land, fresh water, largest nursery system. It goes on and on. They protected the land from those who control the economic model that we inherited. So now fast forward, you have Dale Happy Nose, Cole Smith, an educated mass who's gone into banking, law. Bahamians are crying out more for real ownership. So then you had the big fight for shifting the port in Nassau to Clifton. Then those who control the economy and food distribution brought back in Mr. Ingram. They moved the port to Arawak Key, and I think he created treason among the Bahamian citizens because he locked up the port, gave them that arrangement that says you cannot build another port within 22 miles of that port. Morgan's Bluff is 41 miles away, and it meant from 1960s where they couldn't get their hand on the island that have most of the resources in the country. Now that's the only path to true economic independence and true majority rule. Why is it that? Because if you look at Porter's Key and you look at Arawak Key and you say 70% of the population lives on the island of New Providence. Arawak Key is international shipping, and Porter's Key is domestic shipping that feeds our family islands. The only path to breaking those monopoly is Morgan's Bluff. So once they get Morgan's Bluff, it means that everything Mr. Pindling and Clarence A. Bain and Doris Johnson them fought for would be over, because now they would have captured the largest island that has the most farming land, the largest pine forest, largest freshwater lands, largest marine nursery system, and we can list on and on. Largest amount of freshwater lakes, the only islands in the country, only island in the country with rivers, and they would have cut off any part for you breaking their monopoly in Nassau, and then they control Crooked Island, Exuma, San Salvador, because everything has to leave from Porter's Key that feeds the family islands. So when you talk about some strategic things, if I had to say to the Prime Minister, here's a list of things that you could do to transform the next generation, would be the port of Morgan's Bluff must always be owned and controlled by the citizens of the country, and it can only be broken through referendum. Take that to Parliament and pass it. Transfer the mineral resources over to the citizens of the country. Those who want to mine and make guana and mine in any other guana, the mineral resources of the country are owned by the citizens of the country.
Exactly. That, Prescott, I support you 110% on, because this whole talk about 3,000 acres for a port in Meguana is bothering me. I remember there was a group called the I Group. Remember? You all remember?
Yeah, I remember. But isn't when they find treasure in the seabed and stuff like that, then that's the state owns that?
Yeah, but no, that's slightly different though. If you give a group of persons who appear on the face to be Bahamian people 3,000, not 300, not even.
No, I understand the volume.
1,000 acres for a port. You have to convince me, first of all, that a port is being designed and it needs 3,000 acres for. And then you have to also tell me you're not going to do any mining at all. The mining can't happen. And like Prescott said, we have to decide by law that all of the land does not belong to the Queen or the King now. And you have a whole process, legal process, to sort of confuddle people into thinking that this esoteric concept of the King or the Queen is the owner of the land, and therefore the Prime Minister do this, that, and other, but Crown land. No, I want to know that my land is not going to be touched by anybody. And if they're going to touch it, they can have an open, clear discussion and a contract that is looked at by every Bahamian. Show me.
I understand that. My question though is if that law exists as I think it exists, and I'm not a lawyer, so you would know better than me, then why, even if you lease me the land, right? In that lease, I would have to be, for me to mine that, unless I'm doing it illegally, you would have to give me a license to do it. And even if you give me a license to do it, the law itself prohibits me from transferring that wealth to you. That's my take on it. And that's why I used to have arguments with people when they cut up Grand Bahama, the way they cut up Grand Bahama, or even, go even closer. The port downtown, when they dredge the harbor, and they put all that stuff on Harbor Key and wherever else and stuff like that. How was that fill transferred in value to who and to where? I don't know the answers to that, and I don't want us to get into it now. We're already 2 hours, none of 2.5 hours.
It belongs to the state. It belongs to.
That's what I'm saying. So I hear what Code is saying, but I'm thinking that the state still owns it, so it has to be legal if somebody is doing something with it.
Well, I mean, like you said, we will be finished with this show, but at some time, have us back so we can look at this issue very detailed. Because it is not now, it's not finished. And I can tell everyone on the basis of what I saw, and I've seen some things just before Vaughn Miller died, God rest his soul. He was trying real hard as the minister responsible for the environment. And I know that he did quite a lot. Right now, we have this mining bill, or the Mining Act, sorry, that's supposed to come, that came into force, but we have the regulations that need to come right behind it. But it's not being done. People who know how it works are not being engaged or not being asked or invited to participate. We cannot have that nonsense continue to happen. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to have a few people who have their few people who have a few more people who going to have this thing on lock. And once they do it and they give 3,000 acres of land to someone to build a port,
Code, I want to share something with
what
you.
those people are going to do, they're going to do what people have always done. Once they have a lease gives you ownership, you know.
Code,
Yeah.
I want to share something with you and Dale that's even more troubling than 3,000 acres. Let's refresh your memory. The original deal with the I group in Maguana was 10,000 acres.
Yeah.
It was a deal between the Bahamian people provided the 10,000 acres as they're part of the deal. Mr. Ingram turned around and changed that deal where that 10,000 acres that was owned by the Bahamian people, almost half of that land was sold fee simple. I don't know if you go back and remember the press conference with Vincent Vanderpool Wallace sitting down.
Yeah.
So you have to see more than 3,000 acres of it. You see how troubling this is? So you have to ask yourself, why is it there's so much attention being paid to this particular island? That is the question. See, I already know the answer to that.
Part of it is
That's
deep
why
water.
yes, it's not just the ocean coming in close. It is the granite beneath the ground.
Yes. Exactly.
The beautiful green and the blue.
See, all of those things, Preston, let me say this much real quickly. All of those things need to be looked at happy and need to be seriously investigated by a commission of people. So that if this fee simple was in fact conveyed, if it is determined that fraud is a very serious thing. I know a lot of people are very afraid of saying it, but if fraud was involved, we need to vitiate it. We need to make it void. And it's as simple as that, because we cannot allow anyone who has the power and who think Bahamians don't read gonna go ahead and sneak and just give the land away for little or nothing.
That's
and
not like you say, Code. It's not legitimate. The government in every part of the world has the power, Dale, through eminent domain. Can take the government could come and take this land here where I'm at, West Africa Creek Lodges. The government could say, we need to take this because Dale and Code has a proposal that serves the national interest of the country.
Right. Yeah.
I can kick and
See
scream
it all the time.
Yeah, they do it all the time. So don't say that. When I listen about these deals and 5,000 acres on the west side and a couple thousand acres here and there, no. It's you got to look at the underlying issue why we don't make these decisions, right? That's a whole other show. But I think we've covered a lot here tonight.
Yeah, I think we put a good foundation down for whenever we bring you back, so people would know what to expect and they can come with their questions to ask of you, good gentlemen, with all the knowledge in your head and so forth.
I would like when we come back if we have a way to show the Bahamian visually.
Yeah, man.
That's a lot of the stuff that we can share the screen.
Just like I showed those different things, I could put up videos on the screen too. So it's
okay, that's good.
Right.
That's awesome. That's great.
And when you come back, Prescott, I want you to walk the people through what each island has as natural resources. Because I know as a child, not too young of a child, but older child, before I get to be a young adult, that every island, because
everyone is unique. You're right.
Has something. Yeah.
That's what I find. There is no island in the Bahamas that you can say doesn't have incredible value. I'll give you one example of Crooked Island and Auckland. The geography of Crooked Island and Auckland, it's so unique that when the island of Auckland supports the rainfall that develops on Crooked Island. So without Auckland, at the beginning part of Auckland, the prevailing wind is out the east. And to show you how significant that is, if you go to Salina Point, it's like a desert. Because by the time the clouds build, That portion is too narrow. But yet, by the time they build on the very other end of Auckland, that creates between Auckland and Crooked Island like the island of New Providence. So Crooked Island gets much more rainfall than Auckland just because of that unique geography. But they serve one ecosystem supports the next. They have this huge sound in between them, from sponging to stone crab to lobster to conch. Incredible marine resources. One geography support the next. And I remember there was a gentleman who was trying to catch a blue marlin. He owned quite a few houses on Paradise Island where you have to go by boat to get to them. And he said to me, he said, Prescott, I was trying for over 20 years to catch a blue marlin around Providence. Haven't caught one yet. I said, Mr. Lloyd, if you want to catch a blue marlin, I guarantee you, if you take your yacht and go to Crooked Island,
you catch at least one, yeah.
You'll catch it. He went down there and he caught two. He thought I was the Lord and Savior after that. He said, the captain said, man, Prescott, you get me catch it, boy, hell, because anytime Mr. Lloyd get up for breakfast, but let's see what Prescott thinks I should have. What does Prescott think about it? he said, I've been trying to catch a marlin for 20 years. Yeah. And you sent me to Crooked Island and I caught two.
I would give him two of them on a piece of paper.
That's a good one.
But folks, gents, thank you. I think you put a lot on the table for people to think about, and then take action.
Action is the key thing.
Yes. To adjust their movements and how they're gonna do so that they could become more sustainable and prosperous for themselves. Right.
Well, we get
as a nation.
We get a hot one tomorrow.
Yeah, I hear about that one. I saw people keep sending me it. But
you know what the
we're stopping now.
The issue around these boating fees is very controversial, right? So they can all the knives and the guns tomorrow.
This is real discussion about the environment and our natural resources. This is not just lip service. Like Prescott said, this is living proof. What we've done, what we do, and we will continue to do. And now is the right time to talk about it all. So we're going to keep on with this, so whenever you're ready to call us back, we're ready to go.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you all taking the time to come and share. And we went over a little bit of time because I know you all had a lot on the slate that you wanted to put there to build that foundation.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it, and I think it's important work you're doing. And we can next time we can get a lot more younger and more senior Bahamians involved in such a discussion that you're having, because it's so important.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
I appreciate that. You're welcome.
I'm much happy.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thinking about everything we've explored tonight, on land, the sea, the skills, the systems, wondering if the opportunities we're talking about are really missing, or if they've been right in front of us, waiting our intention. Because access alone has never the end goal. The ownership has never meant to be individuals' ambitions only. What we've heard tonight points to something deeper, that the new built environment won't be delivered by policy alone, or government alone, or one generation alone. It will be built by the opportunities where others see limitations, who choose stewardship over extraction, who design systems that convert access into ownership, and ownership into lasting national value. So the challenge now isn't just what can't be done, It's who is willing to do it. With discipline, collaboration, and the long-term thinking. Because the future of the Bahamas won't be decided by what we inherit, but what we intentionally choose to build together. Something to think about. Think about it long. Think about it strong. Thanks for taking the time. Share, like, and do continue to comment. This has been your host, Dale Happy Notes.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative 242